Hi everyone, this is Dan and this is Alien Alamo by Nolan. And I forgot to kind of mention this in the previous video, mainly because I got a double pack of Alien Alamo and the Chenoo. But it did come with a goodie pack, and since the campaign deliverable was really Alien Alamo, I'll kind of go over the goodie pack for this one, not necessarily the Chenoo. But anyway, here is Alien Alamo. It's around the same size as the Chenoo. I don't know if it's 48 pages or a little bit longer. I think it's a little bit longer. But unlike the Chenoo, in full color, production quality is pretty solid. I think it's the same printer as the Chenoo. One thing I like about both books, by the way, is there's like a semi-crease. I don't know if you can see it right here. And I like that a lot in perfect bound books. This book really feels like you're going to be able to read it many times and even go full open like this and not, damage the book, which is important to me for all you guys who watch my channel, because I give my books the business. Anyhow, the other thing is the goodie pack that came here. By the way, I'm not really sure what happened with this guy, but basically the wrapper here basically got destroyed when it came in the mail to me. So I'm actually not familiar with these. Normally these self-sealing baggies tend to have like a bigger flap that comes a little bit further here. So I don't know what brand these are. Yeah, I don't know if I would, I don't know. I kind of feel like I would recommend Graham choosing a different brand for these wrappers, because these things don't feel that strong, even the one that these two books came in. So anyway, let me open this up. It's basically falling apart from the side right here. So big thing that obviously you've seen right here is a Cyberfrog fan piece. Kind of funny right here. We finally get to see Cyberfrog in 2022. Hopefully we'll get to see the other Cyberfrog later. But and here's a bunch of other goodies. So here's a card, another collector card. This looks like a sticker. More stickers. What is this? What is it? Bookmarker. And more stickers, right? Yeah, these things are... I think the stickers are pretty cool. I've never been a big fan of trading cards. I kind of don't really care. And the bookmarks I usually almost never use anyway. So, kind of cool, but just your typical stuff that people tend to put in these crowdfunded comics. So, Alien Alamo. Let's kind of go to the spoiler-free review here. Alien Alamo is an improvement over the Chenoo. I know yesterday I did the Chenoo and I wasn't really impressed, and I actually kind of really felt like there was a lot of wasted potential in the Chenoo. Alien Alamo is definitely an improvement on that. I wouldn't say this book is great. I would say it's good, to serviceable, right? There's some pretty cool points here. And one thing, I think the decision of Graham Nolan to go to full color and away from black and white, I think was the right decision. His art style benefits so much from color. It really does fill the gaps here in this story. And I feel like he's kind of zeroing in on a different art style. I didn't mention it in the previous book, and apparently Elizabeth Brettweiser colored this. That was interesting. And I think very interesting that his style in this book and the Chenoo is very different from what I remember his style being in the Batman books during, say, the Nightfall and all those other arcs with him and Chuck Dixon working together. And it's not necessarily bad, but his art style in these books, especially here in Alien Alamo, it very much reminds me of whatchamacallit, Carl, what is it, the Disney artist. Is it Carl Banks or Carl Barks? I forget his name. But it very much reminds me of Disney comics. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think those old Disney comics are actually kind of cool. And I wish someone would kind of bring back that art style for comics. I think it's very, very classic and very American. But it is kind of like a bit of a shift to see his style this way compared to what it was in his work at DC, right? I do kind of wish he would consider maybe doing that art style from his time at DC, just because I think that art style is probably what people most remember Graham from, right? This style and even the style in what is it, The Expendables, right? Go to Hell. It's cool and it's certainly a lot more stylized. I think he does expressions very well in this art style. I just kind of miss the more rendered work that he did. That might have also been the inker that he was teamed up with back in those days, but that's just kind of my 2 cents. But I think the art here, to me, especially with the colors, is superior to the Chenoo, and I like it a lot more. That's just kind of my preference. And a lot of the coloring scheme here, it really does get across Texas, right? I think the only thing that kind of bugs me is there's a lot of like hills and stuff like that. And depending on what part of Texas you're talking about, there's not really a lot of geography in Texas. It's a pretty flat state. It's very, very flat. So not that you can't have canyons and stuff like that in Texas. They're obviously there. I just sort of feel like my view of Texas is just a lot of shrubs and flatlands, right? And just unbearably hot all the time. Which everyone's kind of pretty well dressed up for that, except for everyone with these jackets. That's kind of weird. Like Texas is miserable hot even at night. Anyhow, other aspect about this in terms of story structure and all the other stuff, this is yet another horror book, and it's also basically it now kind of links the Chenoo into this sort of what Graham Nolan is calling the Nolan verse, right? It's kind of weird to hear him use that term because now I think of like Christopher Nolan from the Batman movies and not necessarily his stuff. So it looks like he's trying to do some sort of monster universe or something like that, all connected with his comics, which is kind of an interesting concept. The only thing I think that bugs me is that there's no strong character. Like there's no lead protagonist or lead protagonist in this universe that he's creating that really kind of draws you in and makes you wonder what's going to happen in the next graphic novel or comic, right? Even in Alien Alamo, which has much better developed characters than the Chenoo, just to note, right? The other thing is the characters are better developed, but they're still kind of this weird, I don't know how to feel it with the pacing, where things kind of happen for the sake of happening, which is sort of like it very much, and I think he even said it one time when he was kind of advertising it, very much feels like one of those B horror movies, right? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. If that's what you're after, then it's pretty cool. For me personally, I'm not sure if I will continue on with Graham Nolan's comics just because there's no strong characters or protagonists that really interest me in this universe. It's really very much about these monsters and the mystery of these monsters and I guess shadowy groups and organizations and the government, I guess, in the background, and you trying to figure out what's going on with these normal human beings that are caught in the middle, right? And if that sort of world or storyline intrigues you, then I can't recommend Alien Alamo, and even though I didn't like it, the Chenoo enough, right? Because that's kind of what I feel Graham Nolan is going for in these books. So overall, pretty decent book. Do I think it's worth $25? I think it's worth closer to $25 than the Chenoo, right? Like this book, I would argue at a comic shop or bookstore, $12.99, maybe $14.99, I would say is probably in the range where it should live, right? Production quality is pretty good, and I just, again, I really do like the color more in this book. And again, I'm not a guy who says everything has to be colored. I think black and white definitely can be very good and has its place, but there's only a certain type of black and white I like. I don't necessarily like, I hate to say it, I don't really like a lot of American black and white comic books, mainly because they all kind of go for that same EC noir kind of jive, and there's, nothing wrong with it, but I just feel, to me, when it comes to style, execution, and really storytelling, I think the Japanese are just better than us at using black and white, mainly because they don't have a choice. They have to use black and white just for production cost and speed, right? But when it comes to color, like, I don't know, man. I dig it. I dig color in American comics. Just kind of my jam. Anyway, let's kind of jump into the story. The story is really, spoilers begin. The story is really about Travis Houston and his son, Jim Houston, and their kind of life on the farm. The real character arc here is really for Travis Houston, the father, who is a World War II veteran and kind of dealing with PTSD before that term was really kind of understood back in these days, right? And his son is sort of becomes the narrator to this story, and really you are really told the story through the son's eyes, James Houston here. And one night these meteors land, and this is around the same time that Sputnik was flying around, the first spacecraft, sent out by the Russians. So there's a lot of both interest and fear of, what is to come, within space and from space, right? And a lot of the background and the conflict for these two characters really gets laid out in these pages pretty sufficiently. And I think in terms of character development, this is what I mean by this is an improvement over the Chenoo. You really do get a much better understanding of Travis Houston, James Houston, the main characters of this story, right? Now, I will say, even though you get an understanding of the characters, they're not, at least in my feeling, particularly strong characters. There's a lot of things that get kind of a bit choppy in the execution, I feel, especially in the dialogue and the storytelling here. But, in terms of the characters that were in the Chenoo, it's like light years ahead. So they wake up the next morning. There's some foreshadowing here with these little insects. And there's kind of a mystery where their neighboring ranch is kind of trying to figure out what's going on with cattle. And, then we get a little flashback scene of Travis, surviving World War II here, fighting the Japanese, and almost blowing his son's brains out as he wakes up at night. And you get sort of the understanding right here, the realization, this sort of really quick character arc of his, of realizing that he has to come to terms with what happened to him in the past. Again, not executed perfectly, but still, appreciate the development here. And again, just, obviously, I think there's some work and polish to do in how well he does it, because I feel some of this kind of is a little rough around the edges in how Graham Nolan tries to execute some of these storytelling aspects. But the fact that it's in here compared to where it was not even in the Chenoo, I think is a big improvement. Somewhere elsewhere in Texas, back on the other ranch, the alien insects are kind of discovered. And two of these guys get basically eaten, and the other guy runs off. And this character, who straight up looks like he's out of what was it, Tombstone, basically is trying to help out because he was a World War I veteran, and he's trying to help out Travis, who's a World War II veteran. And the one survivor from the alien attack comes here to scream about what's going on, hundreds and thousands of little things. And then it kind of leads into this sort of I forget what the name of the B horror movie. I think it had like Kevin Bacon in it. What was the name of that freaking horror movie? It was the one with freaking Kevin Bacon. It was pretty good too. But it kind of feels like that horror movie from here on out, as they all try to kind of survive with these alien crab things trying to kill them. Right, and apparently they're like stink bugs. They just kind of, shit acid on you. I always wondered how, like, this is twice now that this dog basically, kills one of these things. And it's very Disney-like, by the way Graham Nolan draws this dog. And I always wondered, like, how come the thing just doesn't explode and all the acid just kills the dog? But, can't have the dog die. That would be pretty bad. Dog didn't even die in the Chenoo. That would be bad, right? Anyway, they end up having a last stand. There's some crazy moments right here. Burn it with fire, blow it up with a propane tank. Almost expect to see a rocket launcher, Resident Evil style, in this. But I think that would have been cool. You might as well go on the full Monty right there, the whole 9 yards. But they end up somehow killing most of them with a stampede, which was kind of crazy because these things seem to be able to just kill cows willy-nilly, and then all of a sudden they just get killed by cows, which is kind of interesting. And they discover the queen's nests and Travis has a bit of a nightmare, remembering going into a cave, chasing down the Japanese in World War II, and they end up very quickly running back and going back to go get dynamite. One last guy gets skewered, and they blow the thing up. Good guys win, etc. And then we flash back to the future, where we find the narrator right here, which is the son, who is buying back the ranch from some very hipster-looking family, and basically having memories. Meanwhile, he's got basically his crew digging up the rocks right here and taking all these eggs. And apparently he's running some kind of organization who's, I guess, chasing after monsters and aliens and stuff. And he seems to be prepared to face down another invasion of these aliens coming soon, right? So you kind of have this foreshadowing to another story after this story, which ends up like this. I think this ends up working out really well, because he did a similar thing with the Chenoo, where he had kind of this short story after the main story, which should have been in the beginning. But this is kind of cool. This is actually a really unique way to kind of start up a universe that he's trying here. Now, I'm not particularly interested in this universe, just because, I mean, this guy's basically dead, and there's not really a strong character that you really are interested in. I think Travis might have been a really cool character to develop more, but obviously we just jumped in the future and he passed away from cancer. So what are you going to do? But if you were kind of into the idea of a connected horror universe, I guess not too much different than, what was it, Universal, I think, was trying to do it in the movies, right? Then I think you'd be pretty hyped about Alien Alamo. And the Disney style art, which is a little weird at points, with the color, it kind of really gets me into this a lot more than the black and white did in the Chenoo. So, overall, good stuff from the Alien Alamo. Am I interested in any more of this universe? I mean, not really, to be honest. But I think if Graham takes this book and just continues to keep honing and improving his storytelling and his dialogue, and keep working on this, like especially this color combination right here. So interior colors are by Gregory Wright, and then cover colors are by Elizabeth Brettweiser. But either of those two colorists, I think, do a really good job with his art style. And I think in general, from here on out, I would say Graham Nolan should just do color and not black and white. Especially considering his style right here isn't a heavily rendered style, and so the colors really fill in a lot of what I think your mind is kind of like expecting when you open up one of these books. So I think Graham is going in the right direction with Alien Alamo, and even though I'm not super interested in this universe, I would still say this is a good book, and I kind of look forward to seeing what he does from here, right? Anyway, yeah, my opinion, this not so bueno, this actually bueno. Anyhow, guys, that's the video. Let me know what you think. If you like this review, please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. If you got any comments on Alien Alamo, leave it down below, and I will see you next time.